Уважаемые гости и
Dear participants and guests of the forum, we open the strategic session on the social and economic development of the Novosibirsk region till 2030. Dear participants of the strategic session, dear colleagues, I greet you at this event devoted to the key aspects of the main documents for planning the strategic development of the Novosibirsk region till 2030. The strategy was started to be developed at the Council for Implementation the strategy under leadership of the acting governor Andrei Alexandrovich Travnikov, which considered the results of the acting strategy for development of the region till 2025, and the decision was taken to develop a new document. A number of activities were conducted to discuss the strategic directions of scientific and social economic development of the region, of the measures to raise the quality of life of the people, to create conditions, comfortable conditions for self-fulfillment. Working groups were formed, attracting a large number of experts. The work was conducted very thoroughly, and now in the framework of Technoprobe, we have conducted a number of roundtable discussions devoted to this document. Considering the May decree of the President, three strategic priorities have been determined: development of human resources and social resources, creating a modern and safe environment, transformation of cities and towns and settlement, development of competitive economy at a high level of entrepreneurial activity and competition. Today we'll listen to a number of speakers from roundtable discussions and will share their opinions on which key moments should be developed and improved so that the strategy could be fulfilled before the end of the year. The first speaker will be Alexei Nikolaevich Praznichnik, our strategic partner. Dear colleagues, I wish to thank the government of the Novosibirsk region for attracting us to discussion of the strategy of development of the Novosibirsk region. I thank for the honor to present certain results obtained after our joint work. I will speak briefly about some ideas associated with long-term strategic vision of a region's development. First, a few words about how this vision was formed and the results of our close work. It was large-scale work consisting in consultations. Many people were asked, like there was a kind of an image of the opinions of people on all the aspects was created. Large-scale work was conducted to collect certain proposals in different areas. We received thousands of proposals from the people how to develop healthcare, education, and so on. Compared to other regions, that was unique work. Many meetings were held with the business representatives. So during this large-scale process, several key ideas were stated, which might be of interest and which might represent long-term vision of the region's development. Before we discuss strategic vision, we should sum up. So the results obtained over the recent years, they are positive and impressive. Generally, the economy of the region was growing at a high rate. Over the 10 years, it has grown 30%. In terms of social and urban development, the region actively solved the issues of accessibility and affordability of housing and infrastructure. In terms of demography and the quality of life, many parameters were improved. But the strategy is the objective that is set. It is an ambitious goal, and the roadmap is made to achieve these goals. What is the strategy? It's a very simple. It's to understand the bottlenecks and to see where the new perspectives are. I wish to illustrate which bottlenecks exist in the region's development and which new opportunities open up. Here you can see the key bottlenecks identified by the experts. The first one is the level of the economy's development does not quite correspond to the potential the region has in terms of human resources, new jobs, and so on. The other important issue is, like, amid the leader regions, the people speak about accessibility and the quality of the healthcare is becoming a weak point for the region. For the Novosibirsk region, it may be even worse to realize it because it has a huge scientific potential over the science and of medicine, but the quality of average medical care is not so high. The next problem the residents of the region identifies everything related to safety of living. It's important that people consider it a bottleneck and that we should look for solutions of this problem, including modern technologies. The next issue, which is clear for the people of Novosibirsk. No, Novosibirsk is the main driver of economic development, but if we compare Novosibirsk to other leaders and such large foreign cities, the quality of the city environment and city infrastructure leaves much to be desired. And lastly, we see how favorable demographic situation is. So we can see that the current infrastructure is not sufficient for bringing up children. Does not correspond to the ambitious plans. So if everything related to the problems that have accumulated. But what is more important is to see the opportunities that open up, and if we balance the problems and opportunities, then should be focused on new, interesting potential directions and ideas. Here in this slide, you can see some key opportunities identified by the experts. The first one is transformation of the Novosibirsk region into a leading innovative hub, not only in the Siberian region but also on a national scale. Here, the level of ambitions should be higher. We see how actively and innovatively the regions in Asian countries are developing. Novosibirsk has an opportunity to become a noticeable hub in the Asian region. The second important region is, it's clear that for many regions, education and healthcare are part of the infrastructure, but in Novosibirsk, these social sectors may become drivers of economic development, and there is a huge potential for exporting science-intensive services like education and healthcare. We see that the demand for these services is growing in Russia and abroad. The third important opportunity that opens up and for which Novosibirsk region is prepared is that the image of the industry is radically changing. We talk about the digital economy, but one of the things that the digital economy changes is the industry. So the modern digital technologies, artificial intellect are changing our ideas of what the industry will be like in 5 or 10 years. In this sense, Novosibirsk region has all the competencies to become such a leading center. There are many examples, but we know the examples of local companies that helped international companies to develop new generations of information technologies for the industries of the future. They are working with Asian companies, helping them develop new modern solutions. So in this sense, there is a huge potential here. The next item we mentioned today, the session devoted to the competitiveness of the economy. There has been much talk about for the recent 10 years where the logistical hub would emerge in Russia. Many cities claim to this position, but we see that in under conditions of harsh competition, the Novosibirsk region is turning into one of the leading transport and logistical hubs. For the next 10 years, it's a huge potential which may be implemented, and some other opportunities. The location of the Novosibirsk region is unique, which may provide opportunities for comparison with the Asian countries. Speaking about entrepreneurial regions, many regions wish to have such a fame, but the Novosibirsk region is distinct for that, because if we use different parameters, it is the entrepreneurial potential that is one of the most developed potentials in the country. If we look at the infrastructure, the potential, the energy the entrepreneurs have, it's one of those opportunities that has not been capitalized yet, but can provide payback in the future. So the strategy is primarily to try to solve the key problems that emerge, but mostly it is the desire to move forward and not to lose the opportunities that open up. As for the vision, we prepared a small document. It has been sent, I guess it's about 15 pages of the text where the main ideas are stated. I want to comment upon the elements the strategic vision consists of.
So the first, from the point of view of the region's mission, it is clear that the image of the future sometimes is not different from one another in different regions. All regions are trying to be competitive, to have a high level of life. And in any case, we dared to add as that for the future of Novosibirsk region, the city of Novosibirsk is highly important as a driver of economic development. That helps to the region to be integrated not only into the national but into the international economy. And as for a few key goals from the point of view of the strategy, there are many goals related to different directions, and we would like to note some of the key goals. And first of all, till 2030, there are no limitations to our mind for increasing the GDP of the region in two. And some consider that this goal is rather ambitious, but the economy is important. As we agreed, GDP grew lately by 30%, and till 2020 it can be doubled as well. So the growth of population, there was a complicated discussion, but the population of the region can reach 3 million. There are all prospects, demographic, natural inflow of population from other regions, lowering the level of unemployment, lowering the level of poverty. And another important indicator is providing tempo for productivity. This is related to the key goals. And we formulated 8 strategic directions. In the strategic visions, there are certain sub-directions and target values. There are a few comments. So, colleagues, first of all, competitive economy. There is a lot of discussion always that there are primary working places, and then first people come, and then working places are created, and the economy is a driver for development. And so for Novosibirsk region, one of the key priorities is a competitive economy. We'll tell in more detail. And the second important point, we talked about everything that is related to science and innovation. There is this potential, it is enormous. And at our meeting on competitive economy, we have said that this potential hasn't yet been realized fully. And so we need to build up the potential of science, innovative potential. And so also the policy of administration plays an important role. So, for example, Academic Guidebook 2.0 project. So this is all. These are all prerequisites for implementation of these possibilities. It is all related to talent. The region has unique possibilities in terms of school education. There is an international approach to measuring the quality of school education. We think there is no limitation, so that Novosibirsk can be in 10 leading among 10 leading countries from the point of view of school education. And the second point is higher education. So you can put higher goals, and the leading university can be among 100 of leading universities by 2030. So the middle level education is changing. We see what will be the college education by 2030 for developing secondary vocational training. And another important point is culture and art, science and creative sectors that are very much interconnected. Our president said that Novosibirsk is a scientific capital, and Novosibirsk also has to become a cultural capital of Russia. And modern art is not only related to budget expenditures, but it's an important driver for economic development and for the overall development of the region. So we talked about health as well. It is necessary, and there are many problems and many opportunities in relation to this. And also hospitality, tourism, this is another important direction. As an integrated infrastructure, which for many regions is simply infrastructure. For Novosibirsk region, this is a critical point of growth. And then there is also modern and digital state administration. And also to conclude, I would like to say a couple of words about economics. if you compare Novosibirsk with other Russian regions and with other countries, we see how diversified it is and how many key sectors exist here. It's very important to keep up these opportunities. So we showed the main clusters or key economy sectors that should become drivers of economy. There are three pillars. First, traditional manufacturing sectors that have to increase their productivity, to be transformed due to new digital technologies. And the second very important point is these infrastructure sectors. And usually not much attention is paid to these sectors, but we know that discrete machine building is very important. But for Novosibirsk region, the sectors that are in red, they can be a very important driver for economic development, and we have to speed up the development. The third point, it's everything related to developing new innovative sectors. And I would like to emphasize the role of creative sectors, what is connected to media, to design. This is critical and very important for large cities. So this is a new objective for regional development. And to conclude, if I were asked to formulate one of the main priorities for Novosibirsk region, this is internationalization. 10 years ago, if we look at the successes of developing the region over the last 10 years, an important factor was drawing foreign investment. And we know how successful the regions as Kaluga. So this is a formula of success. Maybe it will not work so well. And the new goal is expert and help and support of companies in their international expansion into other Russian regions, to other countries. So I think for Novosibirsk, this is one of the important strategic objectives and part of the strategic agenda. There is close collaboration between companies, administration, academic community, so we cannot work without them. So all of the documents I have talked about are available, and then we can get the recommendations from the forum participants, and later we'll talk about the results of the three discussion sessions. And so we are only beginning our discussion, and the Novosibirsk region will definitely be able to use the new opportunities for the new round of the economic and social development. Thank you to Alexei Nikolaevich. Dear colleagues, we'll have time after the speakers to ask questions. I'll give the floor to everyone. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Shalanin, the head of Automatics and Electrometry Institute, and the Russian Academy of Sciences will talk about prospective scientific projects. I'm deeply grateful to the organizers of this event for being granted an opportunity to share my considerations on the pressing issues about prospects of scientific and production projects. And I would like to focus on problems in implementation of these projects, the problem of moving scientific product into production. And I was the head of the Institute of Automatics and Electrometry for 15 years. And over this time, I have accumulated a lot of experience in relation to scientific organization and working with industrial partners. Before talking about problems and possible solutions, I would like to quickly describe the developments that our institute has and were perceived successfully by different industrial partners. To make it understandable that our institute has the right to talk about such things. So the work has been carried out in automation of dispatching for the movement of trains. We also interacted with Novosibirsk subway. And we have been carrying out work for a long time with UAVs, jointly with Sibatam and with Sukhoi and Tupolev design, engineering design bureaus. And it is possible to continue this work. Also, we worked with St. Petersburg Design Bureau and studied operative control of documents and identification of owners. We were successful with this work. I'll come back to it when I describe the problems. Not long ago, a couple years ago, so the Siberian machine device building factory obtained a system, and then productivity increased. And because of this, we obtained a state prize for Novosibirsk region. And at the previous Technoprom, we talked about the device in cuts and metal, which can make out of metal powder, can make some parts out of metal powder. So this was done with the help of a 3D printer. I'm also going to use this example. And a device to make elements for controlling optical details in the process of manufacturing. And so Europe ordered this, and USA ordered this. Large telescopes and the mirrors were done in our institute.
It's also made in Novosibirsk. It's well known. We did it for the microsurgery. The device from steel that is it was made at the advanced level, and it has been exported. It's used in the eye surgery. And for many years, the Institute has been collaborating with the Center for Preparation of Cosmonauts, ensuring functioning of the training devices by creating virtual reality. This is like hardware, this respective equipment that is produced in our institute. After some interval, we resumed the contact with the Cosmonaut Center. I just gave you a number of examples only, which are probably most interesting and impressive from our work and from our cooperation with the industrial partners. But our industrial partners from different corporations are shown here in this list. We have a lot of work done with Omega and Orion on processing satellite space images of the Earth surfaces. We are solving specialized tasks related to defense. And I must also mention the fact that from our institute, more than a dozen small innovative startups came and using the developments, R&D development of our institute, and these companies originated from our institute, and actually they formed the basis for the technopark that was formed. Those were our companies, I am proud to say. I have shown that the institute and its R&D work we feel the problems that exist now. We feel the problems of interaction with the industry. So I wrote the main problem, which I believe it is. It's the lack of the source of financial support from the prototype to commercial production. A research institute, what it can do in the framework of R&D and different programs, fundamental researches to bring the idea to the level of a prototype, considering that this result may be scaled in the practice. Then the valley of death begins. In the Soviet times, there existed departmental applied institutes, design bureaus, which performed this function and filled this niche that existed between prototyping and production. Now they will gone, and now it's a very serious problem which has to be resolved, and it has to be resolved at the government level by the efforts of organizations. That is too little to solve this serious problem. As a result of this problem, we feel very desperate, because the research institutes of Akademgorodok, huge achievements and developments have accumulated, which are very important, which are kind of frozen. I've just given you the examples of the most interesting developments which are frozen in our institute because no funding. There is no funding to bring the prototypes to production. These are what I showed you: mobile systems of controlling identity of documents. It's an excellent work, and the people who ordered it were very happy, but that was the end of it, because production of such systems require serious funding and investment. The fundamental development of our institute, in cooperation with the Master University from England, allowed us to increase the distance of transmitting information without intermediate amplifiers. if now it's 100 kilometers, that's the limit. Now our technology allows the distance to be extended to 300. Or let's take the sequence DNA sequencer, which was done under integration project system, but after the project was completed, the development got stuck on the way, although there are nuances, there are technological details that have to be continued at the international level. Remote monitoring of cardiac activity based on miniature sensors. They were shown at the Technoprom fair. Laser 3D printer, it's a problem. A 3D printer working with metals. This is additive works, including metals and ceramics. Everybody understands this is very important for our country and abroad. Developments are being done. There is no end result yet. Our institute has obtained certain results, has demonstrated it, and then we got stuck again. We we cannot get the investments for that. It's understandable that we have to work. We cannot just lose sight of all this. So at the level of the institute, we have a certain hope to resolve, if not all of these problems, but most of these problems by the project proposed by the institute in the framework of Akademgorodok 2.0 program. Our project is called Center for Optical and Applied Technologies and Photonics. The tasks we are facing are the main characteristic is of the project is that it is a full cycle project. That we mean that the product should be commercialized by our own efforts. Of course, we have to work from scratch, including machines, workshops. We have designed a center of mock-up of instrument mock-up design. We need our own designers, machine workers to do this. But this is a kind of a local solution. These problems should be resolved at the government level. This is the work of our institute, and this is only an example. The institutes of the Siberian branch of our Russian Academy of Sciences, at least physics institutes, maybe not all of them, but they have many interesting achievements, maybe not at such a scale, but anyway, which are still awaiting their investors. Besides being the scientific supervisor of the institute, I am also chairman of the United Learned Council on Physical Sciences. So I set a task for myself to create the database for physics institutes of the Siberian branch, which should be updated, in which the achievements and the developments of the physics institutes will be presented. The developments will be of different types, so it should be structured so that any outsider could come to a certain website and get acquainted with the database and find contacts, of course, which should be there just to find people to address certain subjects. I think I'll finish at that. Thank you, Anatoly Mikhailovich. Mariana Leonidovna Fomicheva, Director of the Center of Medical Prevention of Diseases. Dear Presidium, dear colleagues, the definition of the quality of human life as a strategic priority at the state level, which determines the future improvement of the system of health, education, physical, culture, and social security, are the important and essential areas in creating conditions for developing the human capital in the social sphere, achieving the national goals determined in the decree of the Russian President of number 204 are a priority in the development of the Novosibirsk region. This is the growth of the population, increase of the life expectancy. In accordance with the President's decree, they have developed the national projects, demography, education, healthcare. At the regional level, the project demography includes the following directions: financial support of families when children are born, contributing to women's employment, healthcare, new physical culture of the older generation. In order to increase the growth of the population and the quality of life, we plan the targeted and financial support, social support of children, social support of older children, of people with of less mobility. The Novosibirsk region has determined to achieve the total birth rate of 1.84, although the average figure is 1.7. The region is conducting the consistent work to strengthen people's health, to form the healthy environment, to popularize the healthy lifestyles. We plan to decrease mortality due to cardiac diseases, to liquidate the personnel deficit, to conduct medical checkups of the population, export of medical services, and forming the network of national research centers. To achieve the target indicators, we plan to develop the system of medical health care and prevention of diseases, to form the centers of health, to popularize healthy lifestyles, to build new objects and to renovate the existing facilities, to introduce thrifty production technologies, and to introduce innovative medical technologies, and to form the brand of the Novosibirsk region as an international center for providing science-intensive medical services. The priority direction in physical and culture and sports is to involve in all groups of the population, and that increasing the accessibility level of these facilities, preparing high-class athletes, and ensuring the personnel. The flagship projects are building of the volleyball center, reconstruction of the hockey arena. The resulting will be sums will be the increase in the number of citizens up to 55%, the accessibility of sports facilities up to 66%, and the share of those involved in sports preparation should reach 100%. Vladimir Putin, in his address to the Federal Assembly, noted that now the important competitive strength is knowledge, technologies, and competencies. This is a clue to a real breakthrough and to increase the level standards of living. The Novosibirsk region should become a scientific, industrial, and educational center of the world level. Increasing the competitiveness of education is a priority direction of the national project of education for the Novosibirsk region. It is in this system that the scientific and educational personnel is prepared necessary for the Novosibirsk region. There is a model school, high educational institution, and industry is functioning. An important project is a modern school. This and other tasks are being resolved in the network of educational institutions of the region. The priority in the area of culture and arts are improvement of the facilities, preserving the historical relics, contributing to harmoniously developed people, and realization of the creative potential, forming a new model of cultural policy and forming the civil society as an object of cultural policy. The regional project culture is aimed at this. It is aimed at increasing the number of visits to libraries, theaters, museums, the number of historical settlements of regional meaning will increase the coverage of the population with schools of arts and music will also increase. Achieving these goals will bring about strengthening of people's health, extending their life, will it ensure their standards of life and will contribute to well-being in the society. Thank you.
Thank you to Anna Leonidovna. And so now, Mr. Monakov, rector of Siberian State University of Communications, Transport Communications. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. It is necessary to tell about the results of the session, a comfortable environment, and at that round table we tried to model the image of the future, to answer questions of what should a comfortable environment be for living not only in an agglomeration but also in rural localities. During this round table, we listened to the experts in the sphere of developing territories, architectural design of territories, and the comfortable areas, and also experts in ecology, construction, building, and transportation. I would like to note that also the related ministries took active part in this discussion before formulating the main objectives for creating a comfortable environment, because it really involves a lot of questions. It's transport accessibility, it's safety and security, comfortable environment. We need to understand in what way our area is developing, that the living space is decreasing, that there is depopulation and special localization of competitive advantages. There is uneven development of economic potential, and of course the city of Novosibirsk is drawing most of the potential into itself, and Novosibirsk agglomeration as well. Experts developed a few recommendations in terms of developing normative acts and documents, and developing projects that would help to even out this disbalance in terms of economic development, and also increase the connectivity of territories. Also, the experts have noted that it is necessary to create programs on territories of economic development for rural areas. We listened to results of research works for the development of such territories as Air City. And the government also ordered some works for advanced development territories, and we agree that there should be advanced development for rural areas. We have considered the stages of implementation of the programs and the development of territories. We noted a few stages. The first stage that is forecastable is developing the logistics centers and the industrial agglomeration. And the second stage, this is gravitation, drawing territories closer to the core of the agglomeration, and we need to form the common job market. And implementing principles of a digital agglomeration, and also connecting the agglomeration with the international space, including the districts around the agglomeration. Also, the issues of providing provision with residential housing were discussed, and we discussed the construction plans for 2030. So more housing will have to be completed, and this should be increased by 1.5 times. There should be higher per capita number of residential housing per one inhabitant of Novosibirsk region. And there was a separate program on renting housing. This is also it puts on brakes on economic development in order to draw qualified resources and the possibilities for renting. And we want to develop the programs for renting housing. So transportation connectivity, all experts, both external and domestic, say that we have a disconnection between districts across the whole region. That is why we formed the transportation framework, and also we need to increase the volume of transportation movements by all types of transport. These figures were corrected and checked by experts from related ministries. We determined criteria for assessing transportation complex. And for criteria, this is the share of population which is in hourly accessibility from the centers of the agglomeration by public and individual transport, and the share of population that for whom the railroad stations and the airport are accessible by an individual and public transport, and the quality of the road network. The number of overloaded parts of the highways and roads, and there is impact upon this transport network by the out of the streets transport. And then I will not talk about documents for developing different kinds of transports and a complex system for organizing transport. And then we talked about the future prospects, and then transportation service. And for Novosibirsk Scientific City, we developed proposals, and all of the events can be assessed economically and in terms of price. This efficiency is evaluated traditionally and socially significant. Then, since Novosibirsk agglomeration is a flagship in some respects, so the proposals to improve transportation complex are related to taking part in a few flagship projects. The first flagship project is the creation of the Center for Managing the Transportation Complex of Southern Siberian macro region, because this will be competition between subjects, where there will be a management center related to the few types of transport, such as railroad. There are 4 types in general, and the center will be drawn onto itself the resources and intellectual systems. information development, development of technologies, and innovative development of transportation complex. That's a separate project. Such projects exist abroad when it's a smart city and management without operators, control system over the movement. So this is definite feature even on the national level of some countries. So we have to be included into the speed movement. We are as a federal project, and we need to continue work to include our agglomeration into the speed road Omsk, Novosibirsk, and Krasnoyarsk. And if it's rather understandable with southern direction, so this project has to be distinctive. And then the line Novosibirsk-Rumchi was discussed. There are all of the necessary prerequisites, and the first steps related to passenger communications have been made. And another point is that related to our round table, this is development of transportation and logistics services. We have 50% processing of container loads. This is higher than the over Russian indicator, and this priority has to be supported and to create conditions for processing loads. Development of trade, of deliveries, and also lowering the share in the ultimate price of transportation services. And this share so far is rather high because we are a remote region. And specialists from utility services see the necessity for developing conditions and beautification of territories. And there were beautiful examples of development and gentrification of territories. And this we determine the criteria which we can use in order to evaluate the efficiency of different events. The first projects for beautification of apartment houses, yards till 2024, and also beautification of public spaces, and involving a higher share of citizens in implementing these projects. Involvement should be up to 80%. We talked about gas provision. There were examples provided. And another important issue where a few experts were dealing with, this is water supply. More than 1 million persons in Novosibirsk region use water of low quality and does not comply with modern sanitary norms. 85% of persons by 2025 should use better quality water. And another important issue, this is power supply. And there is an interesting criteria. This is lowering the energy capacity to 76%. This is an ambitious goal, and I think we can achieve it stage by stage. And we saved 15%. And I think that such figures can be discussed. And then experts set an objective 70% of all the processed wastes. And in the common process, they have to either be sorted or to be utilized. And the last slide as well. Also, we talked about the environmental issues, and this is one of the most important issues. But it turns out that we are discussing the Novosibirsk region. So the second question was planting trees and green plants, and doing forest recuperation. Recreating the green shield around Novosibirsk. There were rather modest figures. So these were the figures of decrease since 2008 of forest and parks of Novosibirsk. Park areas got smaller. and also the lowering of soil waters, groundwaters, and this is counteracting flooding. And so the utility services have the ambitious goals of eliminating the flooded areas and resolve this problem by 2030. Thank you so much for your attention. I tried to tell you in short.
Thank you, Alexander Leonidovich. Olga Molchanova, Deputy Chairman of the Government of the Novosibirsk region, Deputy to the local Council of Deputies. Our roundtable discussion has discussed very actively the issues of forming competitive economy of the Novosibirsk region based on the trends we observe in the world. It's discussion of the issues at the world level that is characteristic of us currently. What do we see now? There are global trends. If we do not consider them, we'll lag behind in our development. So we determined for ourselves that the strategy should not resolve the problems of today, but it should find the solutions of the challenges of the future. We considered our opportunities, and we believe that the economy of knowledge has good perspectives. So it is in this direction that the economy should be developed. We compared ourselves to other developed regions, to St. Petersburg, Sverdlovsk region, Samara region, and Nizhny Novgorod region, where the economy is well developed, which have both the industries and science. So these are some of the innovative regions of Russia. So we looked at ourselves at the level of other developed countries which are high-tech already now. We believe that the Novosibirsk region has all the necessary components to develop in this direction. We should compare ourselves to them. In these countries, there is a high share of other services, including science, information technologies, scientific services, all that is forming the economy of tomorrow. There are three scenarios of development. We have considered the conservative scenario, the target scenario, and the innovative scenario. They differ much. The important parameter is the growth regional product. In the conservative scenario, it may grow by 50%, and the innovative scenario, it may grow by 100%. For the period of 2030, we looked how the volumes of services should change in the areas which we found priorities: education, healthcare, transport, and logistics. Of course, the scientific activity and information technologies. You can see these figures. As a result of this, the structure of the gross regional product will change with these perspective activities prevailing. Of course, the industry should become 4.0, but it will be basic industry, but it will be different. The speakers who spoke about the industry identified the perspective areas which should develop at a higher speed in order to ensure participation of the Novosibirsk region in the international division of labor in creating new added value chains. The speaker on the entrepreneurial activity spoke about the Novosibirsk region as the entrepreneurial hub. Even now, we exceed all the figures indicated in the decree of the president for 2024. We have them now, so we must develop further, and the entrepreneurial activity should be the basic element of our economy. Small-sized, medium-sized businesses in education, healthcare, services should develop fast. Agriculture is very important. It is, again, better than average in the country. About 5% of the gross regional product is given by them. Nikolai Lyakov gave the figures characterizing the agriculture now and the technologies used. I'm talking about drones, which can be used even now in agriculture. This allows us to increase the productivity of 1 hectare of arable land and the cattle rearing complexes. These are not tails. This is what exists in the Novosibirsk region. So that allows us to say that the products we are going to produce and process will allow us to reach the countries, large countries, which will consume our environmentally friendly produce. The fact that we are close to China and India, large and growing countries, gives us good opportunities. There was an interesting presentation from Tolmachova Airport. The manager told us about the role of Tolmachova. We have only Moscow ahead. We lag behind even St. Petersburg. So we are in the triangle of the growing economies of Asia, the old economy of Europe, and the United States. A reduction this way makes the Novosibirsk region an interesting region for developing this transport, which will allow the other sectors of the economy develop, because logistics is one of the most promising activities to reduce costs relating to delivery of products to the end users. So now we have a center of transport logistics of the world level. Irina Manzone and Alexander Petrovich spoke very interestingly about innovative economies. Our companies which develop software do such work, and our highest educational institutions offer their developments for the post-information society. So I hope that what has been said at our roundtable discussion will find the consumers both in Russia and abroad. So we believe that the future of the Novosibirsk region is bright, so we can see it very well. And on the other hand, we understand what has to be done. Specific proposals have been made from the representatives of industries, science, and we know how to implement these ideas. Thank you. I give the floor to the acting governor of the Novosibirsk region, Andrei Travnikov. Good afternoon, dear guests, dear participants. In the framework of working over the strategy of developing of the Novosibirsk region till 2030, serious work has been done. I thank all the participants, members of the working groups, representatives of the expert and scientific communities, the authorities, all the members of different events devoted to the strategies of roundtable discussions and sessions. I wish to remind you that residents of the Novosibirsk region took active part in it. We received more than 4,000 different questionnaires which had proposals for forming the strategy. They will be considered in our work for sure. And indeed, participation of the residents continues, because the work strategy of leadership is continuing. So we hope to receive feedback from the residents of the region. We still have to create the working document, which will be the guidelines for the executive authorities and orientation for business and potential investors. Today we have a common understanding of the future of the region, of the Novosibirsk region in 2030 will be the best region in the European part of Russia, the best place for living, self-fulfillment, It's the Center for Social, Economic, Technological, and Innovative Development, well integrated into the world economy. The Novosibirsk region should be a place of attraction for the most educated, talented, capable people, where they can implement their potential and bring the greatest uh, care for the people and get properly rewarded. We must become the largest educational, cultural, scientific center, and Novosibirsk should turn into one of the largest world centers of competence in digitalization. Our ambitious targets are the population should be more than 3 million, the lifespan should be at least 80 years. In the area of economy, our task is to double the gross regional product by 2030. The work at the strategy is continuing. We should consider the new proposals that will come from the representatives of business, population, experts. We will have to orient ourselves on the respective program documents of the federal level. Active work is being done to discuss the strategy of the spatial development of Russia. Soon they will start discussing the strategy of the social and economic development of our country. We should consider it in our work. Besides, now we have unique conditions, as I believe we are actually starting to implement the strategy. The work we have not completed yet. This happened because in May a new program document was signed for medium-term planning. This is the decree of the President number 204 of May the 7th on national priorities and strategic goals. Today, we identify the strategy of social and economic development till 2030, the first steps for implementation. We identified them as two benchmarks. The first 3 years till 2021 and the next 3 years till 2024. That is, we identify the 6 years horizon to implement our plans for the longer term perspective. Now, we have done large work for interacting with the federal authorities to form plans of achieving the goals the president has set, and for entering of our region into the national projects implemented at the federal level. Dear participants of the events, my report provides for a detailed block devoted to the results of the work on implementation of the May decree. But it seems to me that it is more important to organize a discussion of what you have heard, discussion on the strategic vision of our region, discussion on the results of the work of individual roundtable discussions and work groups. I apologize for for the use of my right as the leader of the region, as the main contractor of the strategy of social and economic development, but I think it's more important. So I suggest the organizers to launch these slides I have prepared for my in my presentation. There are target figures we have determined for the borderline between 2021 and 2024. So I address you to start the discussion to start it I will ask the first question. The question for Alexei Praznichnych and Olga Molchanova. The vision of the strategy of the future was determined the main industries, the main sectors of the industries which we consider as priorities. They were discussed at the Праздничных presentation and Olga Molchanova's presentation even showed some concrete figures. But you might notice that these are quite traditional sectors historically, or those which have been formed over the recent 10, 20 years. The question is, do we consider creating productions in new, non-traditional areas? I mean large productions. As an example, for example, transport machine building or production of home electronics and equipment, or production of chemicals of the third, fourth, fifth transformations. Does the Novosibirsk region have new perspectives for development where we do not have historical competences? Please, Alexei Nikolaevich, Olga Vitalyevna, are you prepared to answer my question? Okay. Speaking about the novel directions in the industry, I can generally characterize it as Industry 4.0. Today, at the session of our roundtable discussion, Vyacheslav Seliverstov spoke about formation of new clusters. Clusterization is one of the elements characterizing economic development. He spoke about the cluster we did not notice. These are catalysts. We also have additive technologies which are being formed as a cluster. And our Center of Cluster Development deals with about 10 clusters. Half of them are industrial clusters. I think that now we must forget such names, words as transport machine building. And inside the electronics itself, we may concentrate on certain elements, or not just say that we will develop electronic machine building. I mean, further specialization will be characterized the new industry. When we were told that in many areas the industry will approach to the consumers. They gave an example. There will be 3D printers. They will produce certain clothes, for example, according to your sizes. You send your sizes to the factory. They will deliver your product. The changes that will take part in the industry for the next 10 or 12 years are sometimes far ahead of what we think. They gave us an example of Lufthansa. They say that there will be 3D printers that will make huge engines, 3D engines in large airports. Large airports will have these machines that will make the parts if something goes wrong. So the new industry will be totally different from our vision of them. So I want to talk about the new competencies. On the one hand, this is software. On the other hand, these are new technologies academician Shalagin spoke about. They say they have developments over the first in Russia 3D printer for metallurgy. We have these foundations. It won't be very important as what to produce. What is important is that we'll have the facilities to produce. Did I answer this question? Yes, generally.
you consider that in the future the automobile factories don't have high prospects, and Novosibirsk should develop technologies. Yes, not simply specific products, but what will be needed later. So the most important thing is to have the right technologies, and that's what Andrei Seliverstov talked about, that we need to move to platform production. If Alexei Nikolaevich would like to add, I'll be happy. So this is probably one of the main issues in any strategy. When we submerged into the work of Novosibirsk region, we discovered, as I was saying, Novosibirsk is a unique economy. And there are many different sectors. For many Russian regions, there are 2 or 3 branches, and the main objective is to find the new drivers for development. And for Novosibirsk region, at least this is my expert opinion, we need to focus on some problem areas for all sectors. And in the session on competitiveness, we have discussed it, the key objectives, the competence of the company from the point of view of expert. So the first thing we need to help companies with is to find its own place in the global market. So this can be regional hero in Novosibirsk, an enterprise that does expert. And we should support them in traditional machine building and in intellectual sphere. And it is also very important to support the expert of social services, health protection and education. And for Novosibirsk, maybe social issues are even more important than determining precise priorities. The second point is the availability of financing. I think funding still plays an important role for economic development, and while there is this level of investment for Novosibirsk, it is actually lower than in other regions. I think the level of investment is rather low, and so in order to provide higher tempo of economic development, we need to increase investment activities. So this is a second very important priority. It will be important to work with financial institutions, because without money you cannot provide economic growth. And the third very important objective, this is to launch the drive of entrepreneurship. A lot was said about it, but for Novosibirsk region, this is a true drive of development, and we need to give freedom for technical entrepreneurs to find new sectors. I would like to provide one example. The limits of the branches of industry change so quickly. They are in flux, and so you can give an example of chemistry, or one of the Russian companies who saw that one of the leading airports in the world, Singapore Airport, had a tender for new solutions related to supplemented virtual reality. And the company risked, took part in the tender and won this tender. And so now it is working with this leading and sophisticated client. And so traditionally our recommendation is that yes, we need to find branch priorities, but it seems to me that in Novosibirsk it might be more important to find narrow spots for all the key segments and to try to resolve these problems. Innovation ideas will allow to find the new niches and the new segments that can become the future points of growth. Thank you, Alexei Nikolaevich, for your interesting comments. It seems to me that you said that we should not long to develop priority spheres, but what is more important for the economy of Novosibirsk region is to create common conditions. And the story of success of separate regions confirms this. Let us compare the story of success in Kaluga and the story of success for St. Petersburg. Kaluga selected as a target priorities automobile industry, and they were successful with it. Leningrad region was creating conditions, and they have automobile construction. There is power buildings. There is a logistics complex. Leningrad region is the region around St. Petersburg, and creating appropriate conditions that is also important for our region. You provided us with appropriate examples. So the objective was to reload its economy. For Kaluga, it used to have this Soviet economy, and Kaluga region discovered for itself that it has fundamental competitive advantages. It is related to a very large market, and so for many spheres, this is a key success factor. You were talking about automobile industry, but automobile factories are built closer to a larger market. For Novosibirsk, it's not a quite competitive advantage, but for Leningrad or St. Petersburg region, it also has unique competitive advantages. It's close to the market. It has access to all ports, and there's different approach for different regions, and in Kalugas it's automobile industry, and Leningrad region they decided to fish in, to catch fish in a broader net, and we're looking for wider opportunities. Novosibirsk region is I wouldn't be afraid of this word. It's a rich economy, different sectors, so we need to use the potential of these riches of Novosibirsk region and to give local entrepreneurs to find a niche in the international market. It is very important not to repeat the success story. Each person needs to have its own success story. For the last 10 years, the priority of many regions is the drawing of foreign investment from Europe, from North America. And unfortunately, in the current situation, the new objective is expert practice, and the federal government is creating a lot of opportunities. And in this respect, we need to surf the wave and to become a leading region, and to have the expansion of local entrepreneurs in the Pacific region, in the Asia region, by resolving issues point by point. And in terms of regions, these conditions are some important details. When we talk about conditions, it is important to find key problems and to resolve them. This is experts, these are investments, everything related to staffing and competencies. And so we have to resolve key problems that exist. So you are the moderator. It is complicated to moderate. So who else would like to maybe say something? Irina Manzhon, please. I talked a lot about some things, and I think there's such a point. We see that digital revolution, it existed, it happened. And before we used to think that views were changing from generation to generation, but now this age has narrowed down. So 5 years of difference between children, these are totally different children, totally different approaches. And so our children, they are oriented for a different level of consumption, not from the point of view of the number of consumption, but the quality of consumption. So we are used to Uber, to taxi, for example, and what's going in this direction is change on us. Our children are getting used to these high standards. And I think when we are thinking about 2030, we need to understand that from the point of view of machinery, devices, probably manufacturing is not going to change. We probably need to understand as Novosibirsk that we must not produce something which has small added value, because the transportation costs are so high that it will not be a competitive produce. And on the one hand, it has to be high-tech production. But also, I think that the principle of bringing the results, bringing the products to the consumer, it's going to change. So it will be not a sale of a car to a person, but selling the use of a car to a person or use of a device. So actually, service part will be developing. I think it's a serious trend. Because they're changing software as a service, we are getting used to it. Because before we bought, a box, and this was all understandable, it was ours. And now it is better to use some system for small money. It is better to use a new automobile and pay a little bit for its use. And after some time, we are going to come to this, and this is going to totally change our life. When I say that business models need to be changed, or business models of factories, and then everything else will change. Then the manufacturing will change, because they will have to not only produce their devices, but also will have to do serious technical support and maintenance, and take old equipment and renovate the materials. So this will be serious restructuring of all enterprises. And I think we should be thinking in this direction. And I think in the strategy of Novosibirsk region, not all indicators are sufficiently ambitious, because in 12 years, a lot of changes are going to happen, and some of the growth will be much higher than we had thought. I agree with you, because in Alexei's report there were numbers about building and construction till 2030, but the president talked about the orienteers by 2024, and these figures you mentioned didn't comply with what the president has said. Irina mentioned that's why we have some events, the round tables, so you would not only speak but would give proposals on what indicators are real for the year 2030. You understand, you're right, that there is a digital revolution, and you know this when Sergei Lyakov was speaking. When he was talking about unmanned combines and tractors, you remember the movie how things were happening in Pinkov, and then the main hero was dreaming about this future. And now the speed of changes is so high that it's becoming reality. And if we look 12 years ahead, we know what futurologists are saying to us, what will be in 2030, 2040. But the objective and the strategy, I can agree completely with Vyacheslav Siliverstov. He was also giving a speech at the round table. So today it's such a live document that it has to be reloaded every 2 years in order to catch up with the trends and to reach the indicators we are hoping for. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I have a few remarks. I think we need to pay attention to them. First of all, in our region, there exists a strategy. It's called 2025. It's a good strategy, and we need to understand why, by the main indicators, this strategy is not being fulfilled. I tried to discuss it with the minister, and it looks like it's a closed topic. And what I wanted to say, Alexei Seliverstov said that the main goal for Novosibirsk region is being included into the international processes, global processes, and to become a center significant for the world economy.
We must know the mechanisms of including it. Now, destruction of the World Emission Center is being destroyed as the main producer of finance. There are specific, concrete examples on the part of our president on the BRICS leaders when we sold American bonds, when recently at the BRICS session there was talk about making settlements in national currencies. We have now the new technologies. What can Novosibirsk offer? Now the centralized financial system is being destroyed. In Russia, it is also centralized. So it seems that it is going to be destroyed too. We have technologies. For example, in Novosibirsk, we have several currency farms. We have technologies of forming decentralized financial systems. I think that there are strong IT technologies in Novosibirsk. There is a finance school in Novosibirsk, and there is a possibility. There are possibilities and there is experience. There is a possibility of becoming a potential hub for the decentralized financial system. That has to be considered. This is the driver that will allow us to attract resources. Another thing is the problem with the fishing rods. We need not fish, but the fishing rods. We need not just help to help the people, but we need the companies, the enterprises to be able to use the technologies and solve their problems. I want to give you famous examples which have been discussed of agriculture. I like the talk about agriculture. It's an interesting technology. We keep helping agricultural producers all the time. Andrei Alexandrovich is really helping, and I want to thank him. But the farmers should have business plans. They must understand how much money they need to keep their farms. They must know the prices at which they are going to sell the grain before they seed the crops. So these markets are called derivatives market. They exist in the world, and Novosibirsk can become a center for forming such transactions that will allow us, just before the yield, notwithstanding of the weather, to sell the future crops and to ensure the necessary payback. We can give many such examples, but the main thing, as I believe Olga Vitalyevna mentioned, the three scenarios. The first conservative scenario is really being proposed. We read many documents proposed by the ministries. They are all aimed at successful development. That's a good idea, but there are no resources for that. So only innovations can help us in our development. But for this, we need new ideas, new approaches, and a desire to discuss them without rejecting them when people do not believe that it is possible to implement. We should approach a totally different, in a totally different way. Dear colleagues, one thesis relating to the competencies of the Novosibirsk region in which it should be developed, in which it can be a leader of Russia and the world. It's a competence of managing changes. like contracting the life cycles of goods and services. New children will be born in the world. We can make unique strategies that can be, but the life cycle of these strategies is also shortened. We must become leaders for the effectiveness of the quality of managing changes. This may be, what do we need for this? We need both the government management and management of the private sector of the industry should start thinking differently. So all the management cycles, we know them in theory. There's a planning, organization, motivation, control. By the way, I may say that if you read the documents of strategic planning attentively, changes in the government management are considered there. That's one. Secondly, much has been said at all the roundtables about digitalization, digital economy. Now the elements of the state management related to digitalization are well described and well designed. I'm not talking about the past, which are like multifunctional centers of providing state services. If you have some ideas which have not been mentioned in our strategy, please bring your proposals so that we could consider them. But I just want you to draw your attention that to the fact, like, remember, there is a citation of Vyacheslav Evgenievich, time flies past. The strategic document should be live. Vyacheslav Evgenievich even referred to metaphysics 2 times, to God, which is actually correct. We should dream, but if we, unless we are confident that we are doing everything correctly and correctly manage changes, and the changes occur every day, every year, then nothing will work out. Thank you, Vladimir. As I understood from the comments, this is continuation of the thesis that in a fast-changing world, it's impossible to find the actual strategy for the next 10 or 15 years. So thus, we'll have to make corrections every 2 or 3 years. So the proposal was to change our internal procedures, including those of strategic management, so that it did not happen like that we are all expecting a new change in the strategy, new orientations of the government plans, and then we'll start acting and introducing these changes. It is probable that as the new strategy till 2030, when we adopt the secondary documents on implementing and monitoring the strategy, we'll have to consider that too and make all these procedures more flexible, more prepared for changes we are expecting. You know, as technologies develop, they create very unusual, surprising things, not in terms of their consumer value, but in terms of ethics, for example. 10 years ago, we spoke about personal data. We did not speak much about cyber crime, only from films, maybe. Now it seems to me that it is very important, as you develop the strategy, to consider not only the ethical, moral norms, but also the legal norms, to be not only the consumers of the legal norms that exist, but to initiate new legal norms that will regulate the new relations, which will characterize the new structure and new technological formation. In particular, I'd like to say that One of the key issues of strategic development based on technological advancement is the human resources issue. I do not like it, the situation when athletes, football and hockey players are protected by the acting legislation, by contracts, as well as people acting in the creative sphere. But engineers and developers, designers, have excessive freedom in relation to the choice of their relations with the employer. I think here we are kind of lagging behind of the entire technological world in legal regulation of the work relations, for example. We should initiate at the federal level too a new contract mode of work with the human resources and resolving human resources problems. I'd like our region to be more active at the federal level in terms of lawmaking and regulations. Thank you. Understand the issue, the problem is clear. The problem is of Russian importance. While an athlete has a contract, he or she will not leave the team. If a developer does not have any contract, that means that he or she is totally free to do whatever they want. So we must initiate development of such legal norms for making contracts so that people could take responsibility. Speaking about like these 2 days, yesterday the plenary session, there was a very important clue line that responsibility is the most important thing. The first two moments are allow us to speak about everything. I represent administration of Omsk. This is a view from the neighbors. I think that the strategy lacks a point, an item of coordination, integration with the neighboring regions. President Putin said when we commissioned the Minister of Transport that he said you should not forget the neighbors when you develop yourselves. If such items are written as coordination and integration of efforts in the strategy of development of the Novosibirsk region, Omsk, Tomsk regions, Krasnoyarsk region, will have more opportunities to declare our autonomy and progress, because we should not be independent. We should work jointly, and Yuri Korglov spoke about it. I think that if we add it, that will be very good for all of us. Thank you for your comment. We thought about it. We started to talk about it at the beginning of the year. Maybe you remember it was in February when some of our neighbors started were very interested in collaboration. It seemed to all of them like that we were going to create a kind of a macro region administratively, but we tried to kind of discard the strategy of competition and come to the strategy of joint cooperation. That collaboration, which annoyed some people, is now being formed. It is being formed not by way of administrative decisions, but by strengthening economic ties. There are concrete examples. For example, ties between Tomsk and Novosibirsk in medical development, ties between Novosibirsk and Barnaul in agricultural technologies, and in our strategy of social and economic development, the strategy of transport development, as we talked about it in May, cooperation with the neighbors and coordination of our plans with our neighbors will be considered. I can also add that in today's project of the spatial development of Russia, Novosibirsk and Tomsk are in the same southern Siberian macro region. That's correct. What else? Okay, let's complete our discussion. What can I say? The strategy is a live document, as we can have seen today. So I have a request for all of you. If you have any comments, proposals, requests, please submit them all to the Ministry of Economic Development, because the strategy of this work is now being conducted. We accept all the proposals, we think about them, so that we could submit our strategy to the public attention. Thank you.